Hi guys, and welcome back to another week of Premier League predictions. And guys, I'm going to ask you this at the start of the video this time around. If you could do us a favour straight away and hit that like button for us. And look, if it's your first time here and you do find you enjoy the video, please hit that subscribe button as well. Let's get into these predictions. And before we do, obviously for those that watch us week in, week out, sadly for me, James did win last week, but it was a narrow victory for James, and it's very, very close in our Premier League predictions table. 165 points. I'm still just in the lead over James with 163. Right, we've got that out of the way, so let's get into these actual predictions. And we're going to start off with Liverpool, who take on Luton. And the reason I'm doing for this one, guys, is because, well, basically because I'm recording this just before this game kicks off, but I'm bringing out the video tomorrow for you guys to see. So you'll know the result by this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I went for a 3-1 prediction. James went for a 3-0 prediction, so you'll know if either of us are right with that one. Let's move on to Palace, who take on Burnley. And of course, this is a Premier League week where one fixture will be missing. But this is going to be interesting because it is obviously Crystal Palace's new manager that will be in charge. Obviously, he won't have had a lot of time with the team after Roy Hodgson did depart. It was announced on the Monday, wasn't it? Of course, the new man coming in. It's going to be interesting. We did a video on the new manager and what he may bring, and I think he is going to bring a real good attacking change to Crystal Palace. He did very well in Germany, where he previously managed, and I think that should be enough to steer Crystal Palace away from the the loomingness of relegation. Of course, the team that is in relegation at the moment is Burnley, and they desperately need points. I don't see them getting them, though, I'll be honest. I think Palace will get a narrow win. I'm going to go for 2-1 Palace in this one, and I'll stick the rest of James's predictions on at the end of the video. Next up, we have Villa versus Forest, and I think this could be a very good game. Of course, let's start off with the visitors at the moment, Nottingham Forest, because they're still waiting on whether they're going to be deducted points or not, and we're not really sure exactly when they're going to find out. I think a date has maybe been confirmed, but it's been kept internally. Some are suggesting, others are just saying that we don't really know when Forest are going to find out the verdict. Of course, that is something that's looming over them because they do need some more points to get away from relegation, depending on how many that they could be deducted. But they come up against an Aston Villa team that, as we know, have had a little bit of a slip, but managed to pull it back last week, and they've been absolutely fantastic at home, not just this season, but over the last year now. I think for that reason, Villa will have a touch too much for a first side, but I think are a very good team. But with Villa being the home team, I've gone 3-1 to Aston Villa. Next up, we have another team that have picked up form of late, and obviously that is Manchester United, a team who, well, let's be honest, things seems to be picking up around Old Trafford. Obviously, Jim Radcliffe's part takeover, about 27% is it he's took over. That's officially done, and the obviously big thing there is he's taking charge of the running of the club, already looking to pull in some key backroom staff, as we've seen going after the Newcastle man, isn't it, in Dan Ashworth. Be interested to see how that one plays out. But they've obviously got a game that's big for them on the pitch as they look to get some form of Europe, and I think they'll still be quietly hoping they can sneak into that top 4 or 5 positions. As we know, 5 positions might be enough to qualify for the Champions League this season. They're coming up against a Fulham team that have been very stable this season, finding themselves nicely in mid-table. I think with the sentiment changing, though, and this being at Old Trafford, I think they will have enough to get the job done. I'm going to go 2-0, and I fancy Højlund to get another goal as well. Next up, we have Brighton, who come up against Everton. Now, by the time you're watching this video, Everton might have had the verdict on whether they're going to get any of their 10 points given back to them. It's been one of those that's been supposed to be announced for the last 2 or 3 days now. Obviously, this video is coming out on Thursday. I'm recording it on the Wednesday evening. At the moment, it's not been talked about, but that's also supposed to be a very good indication on whether Everton are going to then face further points deductions down the line, with obviously those charges leaving over both them and Forest. So that's going to be a massive for Everton, and it'll be interesting to see when they do find out that information. But they've got to get business done on the pitch. The one thing that you would say for Everton at the moment is a very hard team to beat. I think they've drawn the last 3 games, possibly 4 out of the last 5. But the flip side of that is they need to start getting some wins themselves, especially if more points would be deducted. This is going to be a hard game, though, I think, against a Brighton team for me that are going to have a bit too much for Everton. Everton's problem doesn't so much seem the defending, but it's scoring in front of goal that really does seem an issue for them at the moment. And for that reason, I'm going to go Brighton 2, Everton 0. Let's move on to Bournemouth next, who take up on Manchester City. Bournemouth are one of those teams that could cause Man City a bit of bother. And Man City at the moment don't look too convincing. Of course, they managed to get the win against Brentford. But before that, they drew against Chelsea. And let's be honest, it wasn't the most convincing of wins. It was a 1-0 narrow win. And we saw that Brentford, they really managed to hold them off defensively. I expect Bournemouth to do the same. But on the flip side, I also think Bournemouth maybe have a little bit more going forward as well, where they could maybe hit Man City on the counter, especially being the home team. This is maybe going to be a closer one than some people might think, to be honest. I don't see Bournemouth getting battered. Interestingly, James has actually gone for a 4-0 Man City win, so he'd see Bournemouth getting battered. I've actually gone for Man City to scale, get the job done, but for a very narrow 2-1 win in this one. This one's a huge game, and I think for as UK fans watching, it's actually going to be played on the Saturday night, isn't it? Is it about 7:30 kickoff I have in my head? Arsenal taking on Newcastle United. This is, again, a big game for Arsenal. One of those that could be a stepping stone, but they could trip up here, couldn't they? But I think there's going to be goals in this one. I fancy it to be goals. I fancy them to be end-to-end. Newcastle can obviously cause Arsenal some troubles, but they have got a lot of injuries. And you wonder whether Arsenal playing in Europe, maybe that's going to affect them going into this game. Are they going to feel a little bit lethargic maybe from it? They're actually away from home as well. That's another factor that could impact them. But I think Arsenal just about get the job done. I'm going to go for a big scoreline. I'm actually going to go 3-2 in this game. Next up, we've only got 2 more to predict because obviously there's one less game this game's week. It's Wolves who take on Sheffield United. And look, me being a Wolves fan, I know that we go and do big games. We beat the likes of Tottenham, but then we can struggle. Obviously, we went and beat Chelsea not so long ago, but then at home ended up losing to Brentford, who had quite a lot of injuries at the time. This game makes me nervous for that reason. Wolves flying high at the moment, very good sentiment, but Sheffield United, a team desperate to get points on the board, and obviously did manage to get points in the reverse fixture against Wolves. I think this is going to be a close game, actually. I don't think by any means Wolves managed to walk over Sheffield United, but I am going to back us now to get the job done. I'm going to go for a narrow 2-1 scoreline in this one. And let's move on to West Ham, who take on Brentford. 2 teams arguably could do with points on the board. West Ham really struggling at the moment, aren't they? And they're starting to slide down the table. Now, David Moyes' job has apparently been questioned quite heavily, not by the West Ham supporters now, but also the board as well. Apparently, allegedly anyway, the board are already looking for potential other solutions, whether that would be at the end of the season or if Moyes doesn't pick up, then it could be sooner rather than later. And I'd be interested to see if they manage to lose to Brentford or even draw, whether the Moyes out brigade will really start to come on his shoulders even more, because recent form hasn't been great. Brentford are one of those teams, very good defensively at times, but then also not so good defensively at times. They managed to resist, didn't they, against Man City, but it was a mistake in the end that led to their downfall. I fancy this one to be a close game between the 2 London teams. I'm actually going to call it straight down the middle. I'm going to go West Ham 1, Brentford 1. Guys, that is my final prediction, but on screen, you've also got James's predictions. As I've said at the start of the video, if you do enjoy it, what you've seen, please do hit that like button. It really does help. Also, do subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Hopefully, I'll see you on next week's videos, guys. Take care. Have a good one. Goodbye.